Hello everyone, this is Cockpit Fluff of the Drone Modeler, and today I'm just going to have a quick build update on my group build of the hand painting, brush painting group build. Wait, let me just check the brushes only group build. I apologize. It is led by NVChad2 on Reddit, so I'm going to link the group build in the description. But yeah, this is my current progress with the build. I'm quite happy considering this is my first kind of my first only brush build in 5 years. Too long. Too long. This is my first only brush only build. So I'm just gonna go through my entire build process up until this point right here. Just to kind of talk about my process, and so yeah, I'm gonna switch over to my PC right now. So see you at the PC. Yeah. So yeah, bye bye. So I'm gonna do the updates kind of this way, in kind of like a PowerPoint presentation, since that kind of seems like the easiest way for me to do it like this. And just put the pointer option. Yeah, laser pointer. Why not? So first up, I decided to of course build the cockpit. The cockpit was fairly easy. It's only 1/72nd scale. Nothing too complex right here. I painted it with AK's 3rd gen paints. I bought let me just check. It's the early war colors. It's their newer sets. It features basically every paint you need to make the early war Luftwaffe planes, except for the yellow, which is a shame, but hey ho. So yeah, I painted the cockpit in that color in lmao, which put on beautifully. Like, you cannot see any brush strokes right here. It just works. I love it. I love the paint so much. The rest of the cockpit, I assembled it. It did take a bit of time, especially this around the machine gun ports or thingies. This basically where the belt is. It did take some dry fitting, since it wasn't too clear actually in the instructions how the assembly should go. But I quickly figured it out and basically assembled the plane myself. Also, you do get photo etch parts right here. It is for the pedals, you do get them, which I did use. You also get some other photo etch parts for the fuselage parts, some of them, but truthfully, I didn't really have the need to use them, since they were so obscure that you don't really notice the difference between the plastic and the photo etch parts, especially if you paint the model by hand. So I just opted out of not using them. Next up was the engine. I painted the whole model by hand. So as I said before, this is part of the brushes only group build. So of course I painted this also by hand. I used MIG's black paint. It went on pretty fairly well. I didn't prime any of the plastic too. I also detailed like the spark plugs with Revell silver aluminum paint. But truthfully, I wasn't really feeling the engine. At the start, I wanted to have the engine visible, so you can have it like the plane was in maintenance mode, right? But after making the engine, I didn't quite like it that much how it turned out, so I decided to not use it. I did use the engine, since it is mandatory effectively if you want to build a plane, but I did not have it visible. It's not visible in the model. Here are basically all the other parts. These two parts I did not put. These are for the engine block to be held in place. Since the model does not feature a visible engine, at least the plane that I am building does not have that, I remove them. these parts, and basically now it was time for assembly. But there is something I'd like to note, and that is this. You probably do not notice what I'm talking about, but I'm just gonna point your eyes to this. So when you remove a part, you want to sand it down, right? Yes. But with this model kit, whenever I sanded something down, which had details on it, like for example rivets or panel lines, those details just got lost because because the details were just so fine, so small, so precise that any disturbance by me, the user, would just ruin the parts themselves. And it's not like I used, for example, 400, 800 grit sandpaper. No, I used 1200, 1000 or 1200, that's 1200 grit sandpaper. So it should not create this much destruction on plastic, since the entire panel line right here is gone. It's barely visible, and the rivets are, of course, are gone as well. So now I had to rescribe this part and also re-rivet it as well, which is kind of annoying. So I do wish that they just pressed down the parts a bit longer so you can have some deeper details going on. Also, something to note for the exhausts. The exhausts, the German ones, actually have this line in the middle. Do not sand that off. They actually do feature that line. But I mentioned do not sand that off. But there's this. You can see on the parts, this kind of like a spine, like a rib structure from both sides, like a V, going all along these parts right here. I don't know what causes this. I did not notice this on any planes, like the real life ones, and I have no idea why this is here. I did try to sand it down, but whenever I try to do that, I inevitably cause damage to the actual lines which should appear right in the middle. So I really suggest that you take care when assembling and building this kit, especially with sanding, since you can very easily damage the finish, damage the parts, and also, like, see, just take care. Just take care. You don't want to ruin the details. After that was done, I assembled the whole fuselage. It went on fairly okay. I do have to suggest to you, dry fit the parts. Dry fit them 4 times, not 2, not 3, 4 times dry fit them. Since if you mess up by a millimeter, you will notice it. And the whole model will just look a bit off. Because the fit, for example, fit right here in the back half is perfect. Like you cannot mess it up. I cannot mess it up, so you cannot either, right? But in the front right here, since the engine is there and all the parts which are inside, there's so many little bits and pieces where it can go wrong. So really make sure you dry fit the parts. I did have some luck with fitting the parts together, but on the other side, unfortunately, there is a small hole which I did end up filling up with putty. It wasn't a big job, as you can see. It's like maybe a 0.2 millimeter hole. It would be noticeable, so I did indeed fill it up and sand it down later on. Also, to keep the model together, this is probably the first time in way too long that I've actually used rubber bands to keep the parts together. I usually dislike them since they are very, very strong and they can very easily damage your model if you're not careful with them. But in this case, they work perfectly almost. Especially with the top, upper, and lower with the fuselage shafts. When you connect them, usually there is like a slope right here, or like a step, like it goes from a higher to a lower or from a lower to higher position. But here the rubber bands held the model in such balance that it just cancelled out. It's just a straight line. I could not even feel the transition over. Same with the upper half. It just works. And I'm really happy because I don't feel like sanding. I'm not too big of a fan of sanding. It's okay, but I'd rather paint paint stuff. I also assembled the wings. The wings, nothing too much to comment there. They just slotted together very nicely. No issues there. Or, no, absolutely no issues, to be honest. I also put on like the cover right here. This wasn't visible. Also here is what I mean regarding the fit. So dry feature parts. Here I did have a bigger hole, so I did have to putty it up. Also on the low fuselage, there are some issues with it. I wouldn't call it an issue, it's just a standard fit thing. So here and lower here parts, they did have a slight hole, but I can't really blame the company that much, since it's probably my fault, since I'm useless. I cannot build models without having issues. So this is most likely on me. But yeah, the detailing, beautiful. There are footage parts for these two right here, but I did not manage to really get them working. I'm not that great with footage, so I decided to opt them for plastic, and plastic is also very easy to paint, which in a brush building group build I very much prefer, to be honest. And here are the rest of the parts before the painting stage. So I assembled the wheels, the landing gears, and also the windows, which are separate. This is the headrest, which goes in this part right here, so in the main canopy part. And first up, it was time for the landing gear undercarriage parts to be painted over. I painted them with lmao from the early war set by AK Interactive. I also painted the canopies in that color as well, using a brush and with a technique which I showed in one of my videos. It's probably going to be somewhere up here, the link if you want to check it out. Also, I did also paint the back wheel right here and these parts right here, since they are in the same color. Next up was RLM 65. This is actually from 1938. I can read right here the variant of the RLM 65, but truthfully they're all pretty much very similar, and with brush painting you're not gonna notice too much of a difference. So I did put on 2 layers, I believe. Here's kind of where I've messed up in the group build. NVChat2 said that you can use primer, even spray on primer, or with an airbrush if you want. But I was up for a challenge. I told myself, I'm not gonna cheat. I'm gonna do it the entire build purely by hand. And I did not hand brush a primer, which I had actually the option to do that, but I just kind of didn't do it, which was a mistake, since the paint job wasn't the best. This is the first time I'm brushing a model in a couple of years. While it isn't horrible, it's certainly not the best looking one there is. The low parts here as well, it looks good, it looks okay. The problem here is that when you brush painting, this is where I'm going back to the fine Eduard details. Well, okay, this kit is actually made by, I think, Super Hobby, but Eduard released this version of the model kit, so I'm blaming Eduard for this. But the details are just too fine to brush paint. I tried with thin layers, I tried with thick layers, I tried with medium layers, any kind of layer, and at least some of the details got obstructed. I could not actually make the model without obstructing some kind of details, which really frustrated me, since I'd much rather just have panel lines and no rivets at all, since half the rivets are visible and half are not. Like, I hope you understand what what I'm going for here, right? So yeah, well, yeah, two fine details, if that's even a thing. Next up was the upper camouflage. I painted the upper camouflage in lmao as well. Yes, so the version I'm going for, which is flown by some famous pilot. I know it's some famous pilot. Is painted with lmao. Ed Hartman, I believe, flew this plane. So it's an RLM overall camouflage with RLM 70, I believe, little stripes, which I'm gonna show off later on. So RLM 02 went on much better than the light paint, since I kind of had already had a primer, quote unquote, with the RLM 65 painted before over the fuselage and some parts of the wings. Here is the wing situation right here. As you can see, it looks all right. It's not my best work, I'll have to admit. And this is how I actually painted the little dots, real stripe, tiger stripes kind of right here. So I used my fine tipped brush, and basically I just kind of dabbed the marking into place, the stripes into place. I did not push I did not really slide my brush against the model. I just dabbed into it, like tap 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 tap, as you can see. And later on, I went in for a second layer as well. Also note here, I actually started a way too thick of a pattern on the right wing, since I'm more used to 1/144 scale kits. So when I actually built this is the 1/72 scale, I started out way too thick of a pattern. Gradually I did notice that, and I remedied it, as you can see on the other wing, and here as well. It is kind of more spaced out. But yeah, same technique, so just dab it out, tap 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 tap, and I think it looks fairly good. You do need I did use a synthetic brush, so do keep that in mind, since synthetic brushes are better than like real hair brushes, which are very useful for enamel paints. And here is kind of the final result of the camouflage. It is messy, but that is what I'm going for here. On the real plane, it maybe or perhaps would have been painted over with an airbrush, like a big industrial sized airbrush, but perhaps it was just painted over with a local crew and a simple brush or a mop, right? So that's why I used this technique with the dabbing. I think it looks very nice, and I'm also going to weather it a bit later on, so it's gonna re-pop off later. So that's basically it for the update so far. What's next? Next is the gloss. I'm going to have to put on a gloss layer, and of course the decals, I want to pronounce them, and some weathering. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this small update video. I hope to do more of them in the future. This seems like a fun thing to do, since I'm not constrained by typing it out like I usually do in my Reddit posts. Yeah, I hope to make more of these in the future. I will make an update post with my full thoughts at the end of the build, when I finish the whole model, since I have some other criticism about the kit. But yeah, that's about it from me currently. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.